How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, we will be talking walking with dinosaurs and other various prehistoric things with Jay here. Why don't you introduce yourself to us, Jay?
Hi everyone, my name is Jay. I am a TV producer, paleo artist, and science communicator. I've most recently worked on projects such as Earth, Walking with Dinosaurs 2025, and the soon to be released Evolution.
Ooh, evolution. I've heard a little bit about that. Is there anything like you can share about that project that isn't like embargoed or anything?
Not quite yet. It's going to be out later this year, and I'm very excited for it. It's very much a sort of spiritual successor to Earth, if you watch that. Um, and it has a lot of fun critters in it. That much I can say, but not much more than that.
Dang. It sounds like a really interesting project. I think I've seen like vague things about that here and there. But yeah, you've worked on projects like Walking with Dinosaurs, of course, the recently released 2025 documentary, which is a documentary that I really personally really enjoy. What was it like for you to work on something like that?
It was fun. I mean, I think when I first found out I was going to be working on it, I got the call, and it was from my showrunner Kirsty, and she said, we're working on a new iteration of Walking with Dinosaurs. I could not contain myself. That was the coolest. It's the coolest phone call you could possibly get.
Oh, yeah,
To know
absolutely.
that you to know, to know that you're working on something like that. But honestly, it was a great experience. It was a good 2.5 years of working on production, and then followed by sort of the half year to you know 3/4 of a year working on sort of the post process with all the marketing, and as it came out into the world, going out and doing various talks, various bits and pieces. But it was just a fun process. There were so many. I just have so many good memories from it. Getting to meet a lot of incredible paleontologists, getting to learn from them, getting to work on all my animals. I had like a good 20, 25 different critters I got to work on. And you grow attached to these animals. You start working on them, and you take them through this process of bringing them back to life for the screen, and it's so fun.
That sounds amazing. What was your favorite critter to work on?
Oh, okay. So I've got a couple. I think my favorite creature to work on overall was the Albertosaurus. The Albertosaurus are by far my favorite. They're just very. I think they have been sort of an underrated animal for quite a while. In that people think of the really big tyrannosaurs, and the sort of like more medium-sized, leaner, faster ones have kind of sort of disappeared. They were pretty prominent, I think, in paleo media in the early 2000s, and then they sort of disappeared for a bit. I think obviously they did show up in the 2013 movie pretty prominently, but I feel like they kind of weren't as prominent for a while. But they're just such cool animals. I got to work very closely with Mark Powers and Henry Sharp, who were working on the Albertosaurus site, and learned so much about them. And they're just cool animals. The potential social behavior, the sort of ornamentation they've got on their heads, the anatomy of them that allows them to be such speedy animals. They've got this fused bone in their metatarsals, the octometatarsal condition that actually Tom Holtz that has done a lot of work on. I believe he coined the term octometatarsal, which is the pinched bone in the middle of the metatarsals that tyrannosaurs have, that allows them to bear weight and be just more efficient runners. But it's just all these cool little bits of the animal, and being able to sort of reconstruct them to create something that's just a very cool creature. I just had a lot of fun with them, and I really like the color patterns that we did. That was actually based on an initial concept by Henry Sharp, who put together this sort of kind of more muted body with a really bright coloration across the face. And I sort of took that and riffed on it to create a suite of different color patterns. And I really wanted to introduce this sort of speculative element of making the Albertosaurus pack polymorphic. So there are various birds and reptiles today that are polymorphic, meaning every single individual is a different color.
Hmm.
The obvious ones that come to mind are things like pigeons, but there are many other other reptiles and birds that have that similar condition. And so I want to do that for the Albertosaurus so that each member of the pack is unique and has a different coloration and a different appearance. So, there's some which are more brown with more sort of lilac colorations, some which are darker, almost black with the more teal across the face. And they have different colored eyes as well, which is a lot of fun. We see that in things like hornbills, where you've got, I believe it's like sexually dimorphic in hornbills, where you've got one sex with the yellow eyes and one sex with the red eyes, which is a really fun thing. You don't see that very often in paleomedia. The last I can think of was the Jurassic Park 3 raptors. They actually have those two different eye colors,
Oh
but it's
yeah.
just a fun design element. So that, yeah, the Albertosaurus I think was by far my favorite. But I also enjoyed some of the weirder ones. The Ashdarkids. The Ashdarkids are weird. They're just nonsense animals, and they were a lot of fun.
They they all turned out really, really nicely too, and I didn't even know any of that about the variation in coloration for some of the reptiles. But yeah, that makes sense. So that is a really, really cool detail that I'm glad you guys were able to showcase. You contributed a lot to the designs, didn't you?
Yes, I did design the sort of color scheme for most of the animals. The ones I didn't do were I believe the juvenile Pachyrhinosaurus I didn't do, and I didn't do either of the Spinosaurus designs. But I did the color scheme for pretty much every other animal, which I'm very pleased about. It was a very fun opportunity because I having the opportunity to kind of look at the whole suite of animals and think about how, some of them can be a bit more muted and a bit more bland, but maybe some of the others we really push the sort of vibrancy and the speculation a bit further. For example, I'm thinking of our Lucer-Titan, for example, which is actually quite a vibrant animal. It's very blue and red, and it's got a lot of colors to it. And I think that sort of came about with a lot of discussions with our paleontologist. We spoke to Mike Taylor, who's a sauropod expert, and we were talking about the fact that these animals are huge with little, they've got very little risk of predation. When you're the size of, a bus, or the size of like three buses, there's not much a predator can do to you, and it's not like you're going to be hiding anywhere either. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it kind of makes sense of like you've got all that real estate across your body. Why not push it into interesting colorations? And colors are such an interesting thing with prehistoric animals because in the modern day we see different animals obtaining color via different ways. Red coloration is usually obtained via eating, like fruit or krill or things like that. So animals that are very vibrantly red eat things like that. But then things like blue are like structural coloration. So it's the structure of whatever integument you've got, whether it be scales or feathers, that reflects light in a certain way to produce blue. Um, but then, there's also these sort of rogue colorations, as I like to think about them, where a specific group of animal will just, for no reason, decide to evolve their own way of creating color. Penguins are a great example because the yellow that you see in penguins, only penguins can make that yellow. They found a specific way of creating that. At some point in their evolutionary history. Like I was just saying about reds, most animals can only make red by eating foods,
Uh,
but parrots have found a way to they've evolved a way to create it without having to source it in their environments, which is just a crazy thing to think about. But I love that idea because I think it opens up a lot of possibilities when you're designing prehistoric animal color schemes. Because we're talking about, like 200 million years of evolution. They must have been like these sort of like abilities to generate pigment in interesting ways must have been popping up here, there, everywhere without us ever realizing because the fossil record is so, scarce in that regard. Um, but we also didn't want to go too far and just make everything, like bright pink or anything. So it's trying to find that balance. And I think we hopefully struck a good balance in having some of those quite surprising, vibrant animals like the Lucid Titan, and then keeping some animals a bit more tame. I'm thinking of like the T-Rex, which is, very rusty colored, like sort of like a white, black, rusty red coloration, which is a bit more drab. But that one especially, I think, was inspired quite heavily by Komodo dragons. So it's got quite a lot of like freckling and things like that,
hmm.
but then made to be a bit redder. So it was a lot of fun creating all the different color schemes. It's just it makes you think a lot about the ecology of the animals and what they may have been doing in their environments, and sort of what would they be doing for display? What would they be doing for camouflage? What would they be doing in all these different aspects of their life.
Right.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like a blast. Speaking of art, you're also obviously you're an incredibly talented artist. On Instagram, you've made
Thank
some
you.
phenomenal pieces. Like my favorite being like that the piece that you put
Oh, thank
together.
you.
That was phenomenal. I was like following each day. I was like, oh, it's gonna show up next. It's like, oh my gosh, it's gorgeous.
Oh,
Um,
I'm so happy you enjoyed that.
yeah.
That was like such a fun project. It honestly, it all started because the Chem is like one of my favorite ecosystems of all time. It's just incredible, the variety of life you get there. But I never actually intended to do the whole Chem. I started because um, so Spinosaurus is my favorite animal. I've got it like tattooed on my arm here.
Oh heck yeah.
It's
That's amazing.
It's a cool. But the animal that interests me most in the Chemtem group and the Baharia and that whole, a lot of those North African localities, is actually Deltadromeus.
Hmm.
Because Deltadromeus is such an enigmatic dinosaur. We don't have its head, but the bits of its body we do have suggest a really weird animal. It's a theropod. It's super lanky and skinny. It's got really long limbs, but it doesn't seem to be very robust, and it's huge. The more complete material we have suggests like a 6-7 meter long animal. The There's like fragmentary material that suggests something that's the same length as some of the real big megatheropods, which
Wow.
is just slightly mind-blowing that this weird slender spidery dinosaur could be the same length as something like T-Rex.
Yeah.
It is bizarre. And
Yeah.
we don't know what it really is either,
Yeah.
because we don't have its head. So it's potentially a noasaur, but we also don't really understand what noasaurs are as a whole. We've got
Yeah.
like a few of them that are a bit more well known, but they're a pretty diverse group. You've got things like Machikosaurus, which is a noasaur and is pretty well known. You've got like Elaphrosaurus, Lemusaurus, but they all kind of differ from each other, so it doesn't really help in
Yeah.
in trying to understand Deltadromeus. So I just wanted to illustrate what an animal that big might look like, and I put a little picture of me next to it to see what the size would look like. And I thought, you know what, I've done one. Maybe I should do the other theropods. And then I started doing the other theropods.
That's
And
fair.
once we started doing the theropods, I couldn't stop there. I had to go on to the sauropods, and I had to keep going. And then I think I only started to really question myself when I got to the fish. Fish are, like as weird as dinosaurs are, fish are
Yeah.
something else entirely. They're so confusing. Like you don't need that many parts to your face. What's going on with all that? Like, it's just, like, uh,
Yeah,
but it
that's
was it was yeah, they're just weird things.
yeah. Yeah, that that was highlighted quite well in your piece. Um, tell us a little bit more about your paleoart journey. When did you start, like, drawing dinosaurs and other things like that? How did that like, what's the origin story of that?
So I think, I mean, like I started like everyone else, I think, drawing dinosaurs as a kid. I think like, in fact, I think I mean, there must be something to it because I feel like every kid draws dinosaurs, right? And then
Yeah.
at a certain point, they either stop or they keep going. Um, but I wouldn't say I drew dinosaurs my whole life. I think I drew dinosaurs pretty much my entire childhood. I would say like it kept going until maybe I was like 16 or 17. And then I guess at that point I was like, oh, too cool for dinosaurs or whatever. Which, I think every 17-year-old just makes awful decisions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So so I think I kind of fell out of paleo art for quite a while. I think maybe even when I was sort of, yeah, like 16-ish. And I only really came back to it when I was maybe 25,
Oh, wow.
which was maybe about 5-6 years ago now. Um, so it was about there when it was actually Prehistoric Planet, I think. It was around the time Prehistoric Planet came out. It's around the time I started, um, it's around actually maybe just before Prehistoric Planet because I was still working on Earth. It was around the time I was working on Earth and starting to get back into starting to get into doing sort of VFX work for TV and starting to really get more involved with the online sort of paleo sphere, I guess, and starting to really rediscover that love for paleo art. That I decided, you know what, I really want to get back into it. And so I bought my first like tablet. It's the one I'm talking to you on now, actually.
Oh,
Um, and that was when I decided, okay, you know what? I'm gonna get back into it. And I had no idea how to do digital art. I've never done it before then. I'd maybe like dabbled in it once or twice, like back when I was a teenager. But I never really got into it. So I started essentially from scratch again. And if you if you look back at like my early days doing digital paleo art back in like 2020, 21. I mean, maybe 22. I can't even remember now. It's a lot of these sort of like, classic paleo art starter pack where it's like traced over Scott Hartman skeletal diagrams. It's, the classic like early days trying to figure out paleo art for the first time.
yeah,
Um, which is just, classic. You see it everywhere. I think everyone starts in kind of a
yeah,
similar way.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but it's very quickly, I think I really fell in love with it, and I started drawing like God, it's like pretty much every night. I was just obsessed with like I want to draw every dinosaur ever. But it's just kind of quite it was a great sort of learning experience. Just like I decided very early on that I'm just gonna post everything I do. Like even if I know it looks awful, I'm just gonna keep posting it because it gives me something to keep myself accountable that I want to improve and I want to keep drawing and I want to do this. So I'm just gonna post every single time I do a new piece. So I did, and I kept going, and I had to learn very quickly because I realized as I finished up on Earth and was going to Walking with Dinosaurs that uh, I had this opportunity to do something really quite cool and work, not just on the sort of production side on Walking with Dinosaurs, which is essentially my day job, but
Hmm.
on the sort of artistic side, looking at the animals and stuff. So I had to learn very, very quickly. Um, and that was a real big motivator for me. So I was just like, drawing like like every night. I get home from work and I'd be doing, a new piece. A lot of them, looking back, not great, but they were all like kind of critical to that learning journey. I think like anyone who does paleo art, anyone starting out, there must be so many pieces where you look back on it now and you're like, yeah, that's not great. But they are so fundamental to like learning different things along the way. So each time I'd make a piece, I'd be learning, something new, even if it was a piece that didn't work and I just like completely couldn't stand looking at it. It still taught me what didn't work, so that next time wouldn't do that.
Hmm.
So it was really great to be able to do that and start learning and just building upon that skill set. And that's just kind of how it kept going. And again, like having to do it for work, having to learn so I could do that part of the job. Kind of was a great motivator because I was like, okay, now there's actual stakes involved. I need to really like kind of really push myself. Um, but yeah, I'm so happy I rediscovered paleo art. I think looking back on those years where I lost it for a bit, I felt like there was a big part of my life that was missing, and I'm very glad I've got it now. It's art's so important to me. I know it's important to a lot of people in this space, and it's just been so special to be able to really get back into it and then really build on those skills and get my work out into the world. I cannot tell you how much of a privilege it is to know that my work has contributed to like these series. The fact that some of the dinosaurs on screen have the colors that I painted for them. It's an incredible privilege to be able to do that, and I cannot tell you how special that is. But yeah, beyond the TV stuff, I do still kind of do. I just keep doing art on a day-to-day basis. I just still really enjoy it. I've now started dabbling more into other forms as well. So I've started looking at 2D and 3D animations.
Uh,
Recently I've gotten more into Blender, which took me forever. Blender is like a nightmare to learn.
yeah,
It's not easy. It is like
it's like
I
flying a
I
plane.
think I did like yeah, because everyone always says like, oh, go do the donut tutorial on YouTube, teaches you how to make a donut, and I did that like 10 times. It was just not working for me. Nothing clicked. I think it was only when I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna make a dinosaur and I'm gonna brute force my way through it and figure out how to make a dinosaur that it actually started to click for me. Um, so I'm still very early days in that whole 3D world, but that's been a very fun new adventure to go on. And 2D animation as well has been a lot of fun. That's actually quite an interesting one because I don't do it the sort of traditional like frame by frame way.
Hmm.
What I do is I take my existing sort of illustrations, I put them into Moho, which is a rigging animation software. And what it allows you to do is essentially just rig up your little like illustrations and stuff, your PNGs, and then just make them move. And it kind of
Oh.
like the way you would do it with like a paper puppet.
Oh.
Um,
Huh.
and it works really nice. It's got a very fun look to it. It's very like yeah, like very puppety, but it's a lot of fun to do that. So I'm working right now on a little short 2D animated film, um, which we'll see what happens to that. It's a bit of a challenge making a whole short, even if it is going to be short. It's still like oh god, it's a lot of work. So we'll see what happens with that.
How long do
But
you
yeah, I
think it's
think
gonna
that's
be?
yeah, I think about 10 minutes maybe.
Ooh.
We'll see. It's a sort of like it's a it's not going to be it's a dinosaur thing, but I kind of want to fuse a couple of my different interests. So besides dinosaurs, I love film as a whole. One of my favorite genres is horror. So one of the things I want to do is make a sort of folk horror set in the Jurassic, with the protagonist being a little Camptosaurus.
Huh.
So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, I look forward to that then. All right, well, that's an amazing story. I always love hearing everybody's story of why they got into the specific space that they got into, and that's a really good, great one to hear. And of course, like I said, your art is absolutely incredible.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
yeah, no problem. Um,
Yeah.
it's got to
I
be
was gonna say, I know you've I was gonna say, I know you've been getting into paleo art as well, which is just cool to see. And I
yeah.
really like seeing people like get into that space because it's so fun once you're in there. And one thing I'm hoping to do in the future at some point is set up sort of a paleo art starter guide for people who are new to it. So it's like a sort of tutorial series almost like, how do you get started here? What references are good to use? What like, how do you draw a dinosaur? That sort of thing. So
Oh,
hopefully
that's
I end up getting around to it.
fantastic idea. I could certainly use that. I'm going through a lot of trial and error right now.
I think that's
Yeah.
how it works though. It's a lot of trial and error, but like I've
Mm.
been loving seeing your stuff, and I just love when people just get into it and just start drawing dinosaurs. It's like the coolest thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's gotta be kinda surreal to, like, actually see, like, even just your coloration on screen, like, actually on an
Mm.
actual that animal that's, like, basically moving around. How's that feel?
I But it's weird. It's really like it is really surreal. During the process, it doesn't always hit me quite so quickly because like it's such a long process. We're working through the model bit by bit. Like tweaking things here and there, and then we see the color on it for the first time. But it's on a turntable. It's not really like in the environment or
Mm,
anything, so you don't quite get the full thing. I think the first time it really hit me was actually, I mean, I think it was when the first trailer went out because that was when people actually saw it for the first time.
yeah.
And I was like, oh wow, people are seeing animals with, the colors that I chose for them or the shapes that I, chose for them or the designs that we worked together with the paleontologists to come up with. It was a really special thing. And I don't want to ever like pretend that it was just uh, my design because it's such a collaborative thing with
Mm,
all of the VFX artists who do an incredible job bringing these to life. We worked with the VFX house Lola Post Production, and the artists there were just they were really incredible. I have to thank them for putting up with all of my sort of like making sure that every single scale is in the right place and every but they really brought so much to the table. We had a great asset team who are working on each of the animals in tandem with me with in tandem with our production team in tandem with the paleontologist. So it's a massive collaborative effort, and I know it must feel the same for them when they're seeing their animals on the screen because it's like it's a really cool thing. I know again, like I mentioned with the Albertosaurus talking to Henry Sharp and Mark Powers, it is so cool for them to be able to see their sort of ideal Albertosaurus on screen. It's
yeah.
it's a really I think it's a cool moment for them, and it's something I really hope to take into my various projects going forward in TV is to really that ability to work so closely with a paleontologist or a scientist and visualize their work in a way that's hopefully true to their work. I think is a it's a really cool thing.
That's awesome. Certainly a lot of moving parts. It's
It's a lot. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
huge process to get these projects made.
Yeah.
Do you have like a dream project, like something that you would like to, contribute your talents to?
That's a really good question. I think my answer to that, a few people have asked me this in the past. I think my answer is always going to change. Got like a million ideas rattling about in my head that I
Mm,
would love to make a reality. One thing I've really wanted for a while, and I might just do this on my own as a 2D thing, but it's the idea of a series where you're just following a single animal, like say like 5, 6 episodes, and just following a single animal from birth until death and following like these 5 or 6 major pivotal points in its life. And along the way, you experience its ecosystem, all of its trials and tribulations. It's like its highlights. Like you could choose any animal in prehistory to do this with because you think you would get a really cool story either way. Um,
yeah.
you could pick like some random cynodonts in the Triassic, or you could pick a megatheropod, or you could pick a fish. And you would probably get a really cool story because you'd have this massive arc to be able to tell, what was its first hunt like? What was the first time it had to display for a mate? What was the first major conflict it got into with another of its kind? You've got all these little stories and you can build up this really, I think, comprehensive view of a single animal's life across a long period. I think I would love something like that. That would be super cool. I would love to be yeah, it just would be a lot of fun, I think. But who knows? If it doesn't ever happen in the TV world, I would like to just make a version of that on my own, I think.
Oh, I'd definitely watch that. That would be awesome. You could like look at, yeah, like you said, like Cenozoic critters, Mesozoic, Paleozoic. It needs to happen now. You, you now that you've made me aware to it. Now I'm gonna be disappointed if it never does.
Just gotta, yeah, I've got to find a way. I've got to convince someone to let me make that because I
Yeah.
think it is so fun, right? Like every individual animal must have like because in the kind of various paleo media things we've seen, like Walking with Dinosaurs, the original. If you think about the Ornithochirus episode, we see like the end of his life. But can you imagine if we had like 4 episodes leading up to it where you saw him hatch, you saw him, do his first flight, you saw him hunt for the first time. That sort of thing, I
Yeah.
think, would just be so cool to see.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. So yeah, that is a very solid dream project to have. Are there any final
Mhm.
thoughts about like I don't know, maybe your time with Walking with Dinosaurs that you would like to share or any other prehistoric projects or just anything you're passionate about, really?
I mean, I think there's the one thing I was going to say is that these sorts of projects, these big projects, the paleo media ones, I just get so excited for each one of them. I mean, I thought that the longer I worked in the industry, the more sort of normalized I would get to them. But each time one's about to come out, I get so excited. I just
Yeah.
get tremendously like I like Surviving Earth's about to come out, and I
It's
cannot contain myself. Like it just never gets any less exciting, I think. And what I want to say, I think, is that these projects are for a lot of people. So many people pour their hearts into these things. They're huge endeavors. They are very challenging to make, and they take a lot of people contributing a lot of their skills, a lot of their time, a lot of their love. And it always makes me so happy to see when a new one's coming out because they're not very common. They've become more common recently, but they're not like, you don't get one every other day. But
right.
it's just really cool to see. And I think one thing that I've been also really enjoying is seeing not just this boom in the sort of big, large scale projects, but the sort of boom in like independent projects that people are making. Dinosauria comes to mind, being fantastic. David James Armsby always knocks it out of the park with those.
Mm.
I'm seeing more and more like short animations on YouTube. People are creating these little short stories, and I think we just need more of both, basically.
Yeah.
I love the big projects, but I think seeing more and more people make their own stuff makes me so happy to see, especially like people who've maybe never really done that sort of thing before, but have decided, you know what, I've got a story to tell. I'm going to find a way to tell it and then make their own thing. I think that's the coolest thing in the world, and I hope we get more, basically. And that's, I guess, what I want to put out there is the big projects are one thing, and they'll, TV companies will hopefully keep making them and all that. But if anyone watching this has an idea for a thing they want to make, whether it's an animated short, a little stop motion thing with clay, if you just want to draw a dinosaur, like I really hope that, despite the wider state of things, like go and make your thing. It's a really important thing to just go and make your thing. And I hope that people do.
Unless we have any other final thoughts, I guess I can come to a close.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool. All
Well,
right, so
thank you for having me.
yeah, no problem. And where can everybody find you on like social
Ah,
medias?
yes. So if anyone wants to find me on my various socials, I'm Kakapo J on most places. That username Kakapo is a large, rotund, flightless green parrot. It's one of my favorite modern day dinosaurs. It's an incredibly silly animal, super endangered, but very, very cute. So yeah, Kakapo J on most socials. And if you want, I also have a website. It's kakapoj.com.
Beautiful. And I'll have those linked down below. So definitely go and check them out. Uh Again, really incredible work. I can't recommend it enough. So it was
Thank you.
fantastic having you here today. It was fantastic talking with you. And yeah, I guess we'll call it close. Have a good one, everybody.
Have a good one. Bye.